Hey, somebody's got to crack the pecans. You have? Excellent. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. You are listening to the Professional Noticer. Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Andrews. Hey, thank you for making me a part of your week. My purpose here today, and with every show we do, is to play the part of a best friend or coach. I want to help you live the life of your wildest dreams by giving you access to the greatest mentors the world has to offer today. Our sponsor this week is IATAM.org. That's IAITAM.org. How would you like to complete an accredited online program and get a degree that is actually in huge demand? ITAM is the only global training organization turning out IT asset managers that corporations immediately hire all over the world. So check them out. Just go to IAITAM.org and look through their client list. You'll see everybody from Sony Pictures to NASA to the United Nations. Google is one of ITAM's clients. Google, Yahoo, Facebook, Microsoft, Apple, and these companies only hire the people that ITAM has trained because ITAM offers the only accredited degree in the field. That's IAITAM.org. Observations and answers, that's what we do here on the Professional Noticer. And we love it when somebody comes to the table with both. And that's the case today. We have a very unique guest that we found by way of national media. He is the talk of a large part of the world right now. His website and his app are called Purposity. And this is the second business he's been founder of. The first he was founder of was picked up by CNN, and it's called Be Remedy. But this guy's a social entrepreneur dedicated to doing great things and involving us along the journey. This is such a great example of what we talk about when we talk about the butterfly effect. Please welcome Blake Canterbury. Blake, how are you?
Oh, I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Man, we're excited that you are here. Now, I got to ask, and you're a guy, so you won't mind me asking this, but how old are you?
So I'm 36 now.
Okay, see,
I have to pause and think about that.
Well, because you look like you could be 24. You know, you have those good genes where, you know, you'll be 60 and people will still be asking for your driver's license. So,
well, if there wasn't the ability to fact check, I would still claim I'm 24.
Well, so tell us, give us an overview of Purposity and how this is used, because I'm fascinated by this concept.
Yeah, so Purposity is based on a really simple idea that you would help your neighbor if you knew they were in need. Typically, we just don't know that they're in need. And kind of how this came about a little bit was I was working at a creative agency in Atlanta, building mobile apps, TV ads, and a homeless liaison at a school district reached out. And she said, Blake, kids are walking into classrooms with holes in their shoes and they're going home hungry. Can tech help with this? So we built a basic technology, gave it to the school district and walked away. 3 months later, they came back and said, you fundamentally solved this issue for us. Every school district in the country is facing this, almost every nonprofit at some level. And we didn't think we actually solved it, but we knew we found a felt need in the world. But where the conversation gets interesting was we conducted massive user research, and everybody we interviewed, it didn't matter age, race, religion, who they were, at some level said, I want to do good in the world. I just don't know where to start. And as we drilled down on that, for most people, generosity for them felt like it was reduced to either you text $10 to the next natural disaster, or maybe you volunteer somewhere you may or may not care about. And we just said, fundamentally, why are we doing generosity the same way our great-great-grandparents did it? It's time for technology just to make doing good in the world relevant and maybe even cool if we can make that happen. So our thesis was if we could just marry great location-based technology like a Uber or Lyft, make it fun, maybe TikTok-ish or Instagram or podcast-ish, and then build a lifestyle brand. Potentially millions of people could help their neighbor in ways that they weren't previously.
Wow. Now
So
you were actually, you have a history of this kind of figuring in generous behavior. You were actually on the board of Compassion International, right?
right. So I currently am on the board of Compassion.
Okay, all right. And
I am a bit younger than some of the other folks on the board, which is a nod to where Compassion's heading. So don't judge Compassion by me. But big fans of just incredible life-changing work, releasing children from poverty in Jesus' name.
And so that is that. Are you able to use the app Purposity with Compassion? Have y'all figured out that connection yet?
So we haven't taken that step yet. Compassion has an entire team dedicated to innovation. So from a board perspective, I get to sit kind of in a governance standpoint on that, but not overstep and force our ideas. They've got brilliant ideas, really capable teams. So we'll see what they come up with. And if there's a relationship to be had, then naturally we would figure that out. But we just want the folks to continue doing what they're doing there.
Right. Now you got your degree in business, correct?
I did. And it's funny, you get a piece of paper that has a degree on it and you really learn business when you get into business.
Yeah, I agree. Where did you get the business degree? I'm just curious.
So I followed baseball around, but I ended up at a school called Southern Poly Tech in Atlanta, Georgia, which is now part of Kennesaw State.
Yeah. I've actually been to Kennesaw State. So,
okay.
Yeah. So where did the how you graduate in business, and I'm trying to connect how this idea hit with you. I mean, what were you doing growing up? Obviously, you said you played baseball, and so what did you see growing up or as a younger adult that led you in this direction? Because this is obviously more than just a business project to you, being on the board of Compassion International and the founder of Be Remedy and now of Purposity. I mean, this is something that means something to you. I mean, and Purposity is a nonprofit, right?
Correct. It is.
So this means more to you than just a business idea. And so where was that catch point that you became involved in thinking through to solutions here?
Yeah, so part of it might be a good play on what I noticed maybe back even when I was in middle school. So I was really a shy kid growing up. But I just kind of always had this knack for, doing the right thing. But there was a day that I was hanging out with some friends, really low income, lived in a trailer park. And one day the refrigerator went out. And I remember the tension and watching his parents just escalate this fight, saying, I told you not to spend money here. Well, I told you not to do this. And I watched this refrigerator almost break my friend's family apart that day. And later that evening, I had a lot of friends. I went and stayed with another friend, and they lived in the country club in Griffin, Georgia. And I remember we were out playing basketball and we were headed inside, and his dad was a hunter, and he had 3 refrigerators in the garage that were just full of meat that he was freezing and food. And I just remember thinking, these are really good people. And they would give one of these if they knew my other friends needed it. I was a shy kid. I did nothing about it. But I remember in hindsight, that was a pivotal moment in my life. In that moment, I didn't set out to change anything. I didn't set out to change the world, but I remembered it. And then as I moved to Atlanta, I saw true wealth and I saw more extreme poverty. And I remember that the thing that always I had to wrestle with was typically when I saw poverty in American cities, wealth was right around the corner. And often I fundamentally felt the same way. Like, these are really good people and they would help these people if they only knew how, right? And I think that's part of the problem is most people just don't know how. And so as technology advanced, and I graduated college, finished college, I was working at a small creative agency, and Twitter was just on the rise at the time. And I was fascinated because you could potentially communicate a message to millions of people with one tweet or one post on Facebook. And so I started learning it. And when the earthquake hit in Haiti in 2010, I quit my job. I went to run social media for a disaster relief organization. And we were able to launch a campaign to connect United Nations, Doctors Without Borders, Samaritan's Purse. Ultimately, around 100,000 people got aided. And that was another pivotal moment in my life of saying, wow, like this can really happen and people will respond. And just fast forwarding from that moment, I spent really the last 10 years of my life has been dedicated to leveraging tech for good. But when the email came from the homeless liaison that I told earlier, technology had advanced to a place where we could build great location-based technology. And one of the premises was I felt like proximity was a big piece of the puzzle. And
Right.
we felt like we live in a world where we can do a doctor's appointment from our cell phone, but we still don't know if our neighbor 2 streets from us has food to eat or clothes to wear. And if we could solve that problem easily, or at least connect it to, then wow, what a game-changing moment that would be. And I think that's a way for people to be generous that they typically weren't. And sorry for the long answer, but this might be a good segue.
No. This is great. This is fascinating. You talk as much as you want. This idea of people being unaware of the needs of their neighbors is, I mean, this has been a constant in our lives, whether we realize it or not. This has been a constant for a long time. I know that my wife is involved in what's called backpack moms. You know, somebody realized at the elementary and middle schools that there were kids that they weren't getting enough to eat, and then they would go home for the weekend and literally, you know, didn't have the ability to leave the home because they were too young to drive or too young to go off on their own, and often didn't have enough to eat for the weekend. And so that's one thing that they do is they, you know, the backpacks are in the cloakrooms, and so those are identified and without anybody knowing, you know, so nobody's embarrassed or anything. There's food put in those backpacks, and it's but it's still a kind of a casual process because, you know, the teacher has to identify that and know, and there is no real way to, I mean, you know, obviously people can drop through the cracks with that, but to have because you're right, I'm one of those people that I look for places to help, and I'm sure I miss a jillion of them, and so to have something that I could identify, you know, because if I'm getting this right, Purposity is an app that not only can I post something on that app identifying somebody who needs something or needs help, but I can also look in an area to see what somebody needs and provide it. Is that right?
Right. So you're exactly right. There's a little bit of vetting inside of there just to make sure that it's secure. So the way that it works is we have a mobile app that you can download. You can go to our website and you give location permissions, and you can scroll down and see the real-time needs of individuals around you. And it's in real time. So maybe 2 streets from you, a kid walked into a classroom with holes in their shoes. That teacher has the ability to pull out their phone and enter a need for a pair of shoes for that kid in real time. We vet the organizations, and then we give them the ability to submit needs. That way there's trust and transparency built into the process. And so maybe it's a kid that needs a pair of shoes. Maybe a single mom needs formula for her newborn baby. You're able to read a story written firsthand by somebody working with them. You can see the price of the item that's being requested. And if you want to help, you literally hit one button, you check out with your credit card or Apple Pay, and the item's on their doorstep in 24 to 48 hours. And then my favorite part is you get a notification in real time letting you know the item you purchased was delivered. And you get the dopamine hit for good. You know, the same feeling you get when you get an Amazon package on your own doorstep. Typically, if you're able to pause in that moment, you're able to realize what that might feel like for a family that may have never had a brand new package sitting on their doorstep before. And it just changes your day, changes your trajectory. Typically, that's when we spread. That's when somebody says, "Oh my gosh, you guys have to hear about this. Like, you got to try this. It was so easy." And then you have a profile and you see every story of every life you impact lives on your wall. They can send you photos and thank you notes back, and they all live on your profile wall. And so it's not kind of an endless black bucket that you texted $10, you don't know who you're helping. Now you can put dinner on people's table and shoes on kids' feet and know exactly who you helped in a transparent way. You get itemized tax receipts for year-end giving, and you can even set giving goals and say, here's how many people I want to help per month or per year, and we'll help progress you towards a life of generosity. So it's simple, it's fun, and it's transparent. It really is.
Wow.
And
And we're going to have, I'll just tell everybody right now, we're going to have all the links on the show notes of how to get to everything that you have. Tell me about Be Remedy. How did that begin, and what does that entail?
Yeah, so Be Remedy was kind of a precursor to this, if you will. It was about the time that I mentioned earlier that Twitter was on its rise, and I was just testing kind of stories. The premise was that we could put a story on social media. Word would spread until somebody responded they wanted to help, and then we'd figure out how to connect the two. So it wasn't scalable, if you will, but the premise was pretty interesting. So it was kind of a social movement, social experiment, if you will. So I had the idea, 2 weeks later, Atlanta had a flood. And so I created a Twitter account in my car on the drive down to the flood, drove around and found an organization, and they said, our biggest need right now is diapers. And I said, okay, people would help with that. So I sent one tweet. And I said, there's a huge need for diapers among Atlanta flood victims. If you can help, either retweet it, repost it on Facebook, or reply. And we ended up having people from 6 different states within 24 hours give money, give diapers. And that was really the launching point. And 6 months later was the earthquake in Haiti. And so that I quit my job to go to Haiti, and I subleased my apartment, and I spent the next year sleeping on couches, just getting this movement off the ground. And so it never had its own tech platform behind it. And kind of the big leap from Be Remedy to Purposity was really that there's big infrastructure, strong governance, and a big tech platform that's scalable, infinitely scalable. So it was really a way to help us go further, faster, all the learned experiences through that.
I'm going to ask you, maybe this might be an odd question, but I would love you to talk as long as you want to, but I want you to go deep on this topic. I think anybody could define generosity, but tell me, other than that good feeling it gives and the good it does, why is generosity such an important part of culture, and what might that mean moving forward?
Yeah, great question. And look, generosity, I think the term in general can even have stereotypes, right? That the cultural elites, folks that have money, can be really generous. And I think it's just time for that whole conversation to shift. Generosity should be much more of a lifestyle than anything. And part of the problem is that culture tries to drive generosity away from us. And culture in the world right now tells us that we can buy our way to happiness, right? You buy this, the shiny new item, the new phone, the new car, the new house. And we know that has a shelf life on it. We know that. but we still pursue it tomorrow because it's the next flashy thing. And the reality is, you can't buy your way to happiness, but when you begin to give your life away, big or small amounts, you begin to find it. And that's the point that we're trying to get people to take a step towards. And it doesn't have to be a huge check. It doesn't have to be, this big sacrifice. It could be $10. It could be the time that you just paused and went and sat with somebody having a hard time. Like, these acts of generosity are good for the people they're helping, but they're really good for your life. And I think culture is just really diminishing the opportunity that generosity can play in our lives. And we do know that science is telling us there's even true health benefits from it. Like, people are living longer who do acts of generosity consistently. There's even studies saying that it's reducing the effects of Alzheimer's. And then as we're looking at a pandemic right now, I think one of the biggest issues that maybe the country's facing, maybe the world's facing, and I think is going to continue to face, is mental health. And I think not all of mental health, but I think, I think part of the issue is we're so self-consumed in this world. If we were able to get outside of ourselves and just not worry as much about maybe how we looked or what we were driving or the next thing we're pursuing for ourselves. Because the fascinating thing is there's a couple books out there you could find, but the stories of people on their deathbed, when they're at the end of their life and they're laying in their deathbed, the stories they tell are never anything that they accomplished. It's always something they did for somebody else. It's always something they did with somebody else, these shared experiences. And so I think generosity has this amazing effect on our own lives to realize that, wait, this was actually the most important part of my life. And in hindsight, if we don't get that right early in our life, then we're going to look back and maybe it's not a life of regret, but the life wouldn't be what you actually wanted it to be. And then you tack on the mental health effects and the actual physical attributes of that and realize that, wow, I could have even lived. Wow. When you look at it all together, it's really hard to deny that we should all be pursuing generosity in small acts or big acts if we have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, you mentioned you had a sly mention to the noticer a little bit ago, and the original noticer, Jones, told me one time on the beach, I was in a rough mood, and he actually told me, he said, you want to do something really important for yourself, is take your eyes off yourself. And I've always remembered that, and that I guess that's the core, the bottom of the pool on generosity. It is looking for large and small opportunities, but to get your eyes off yourself, and so I'm very excited about this. How can we help? What can we do to help? We have a pretty large audience, and so what can we do to help?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think simply downloading the app, signing up for Purposity would be the greatest thing that you could do. And we say that downloading the app or signing up is just the first step. Once you meet your first need, and we have the average price point's $29, so you can find stuff as little as 10 up to 200. There's probably something you can do. So just take one action, get your first thank you message back, fill that moment, and then set a giving goal. Even if it's 2 people over the course of this year, whatever that goal is. Download the app, meet one need, and then set a goal and say, here's how often I want to experience this. And if you like it, if you would, the second thing would be, would you just share it with somebody? Would you tell them that, wow, this thing exists and you can help your neighbor in a really fun, inspiring way?
Awesome. Well, we will. And man, thank you for joining us. I feel very, very fortunate that we found you. Because I had not heard of this until my staff came and said, hey, this is going on, and there's this guy. And I'm like, yeah, call him. How quickly can we get him? And so I appreciate you being available, and anything we can do, we will. So thank you, Blake.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Andy, and thanks for the work that you've put out. And I think that's it. It's a big part of it is just noticing what's around us. Too often we don't see what's around us just because we're kind of focused on self, and it seems like it's a common theme in this conversation, and I'll walk away with it too. So thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, man, this is going to be an amazing butterfly effect, to see how this will move. And it's not just a continuing butterfly effect. It's one that can be started over and over again. And so we'll get a real storm going here.
Sounds great. Let's do it.
Thank you, buddy. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
I'm Andy Andrews, the professional noticer, harnessing common sense and wisdom to plow through challenges all the way to an answer for you. And I think that'll do it for this week. Get us out of here, Matthew. So, ladies and gentlemen, and to the boys and girls who aspire to become ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of another episode of The Professional Noticer. In a world where common sense has become a superpower, I'm harnessing that tiny bit of mental energy I have for you, seeking wisdom, making observations, and endeavoring to answer tough questions in a way that will empower your family and your business. I'm Andy Andrews. Until next week, goodbye. This episode of The Professional Noticer was produced by Matt Lemper. The Noticer theme written and performed by Sugarcane Jane. Old Candy Corn provided for the cast and crew by Twinkle and Smoke of Beverly Hills. Additional financial consideration provided by the VaticanGiftShop.com. Are you tired of being the only one in your group of friends who doesn't travel to exotic locales? Now you can fake a trip to Rome by going online to the VaticanGiftShop.com and giving officially endorsed Vatican items as presents to your friends. You'll find these items nowhere else. Order a case of frozen communion wine on a stick for your next party. Delivered via dry ice, these popsicles come in only one flavor, but they're blessed before they're shipped. For hanging in someone's shower, provide a clean start to their day with the lively menthol smell of Pope on a rope. Also available in the Trinity package with 2 other scents. In packages of 6, we offer Pope party hats, the traditional style in a variety of colors. These items are available along with a whole lot more. So order now at thevaticangiftshop.com. And while supplies last, we are offering free shipping on all large orders of absolution.